Claudia Webbe.
Thank you, Mr. Holliburn. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairship. I also want to thank the Honourable Member for Lewisham East for securing this important debate. I am mindful of what you've just said, Chair, about not speaking about cases which are currently going through the courts. I wasn't aware of the case in the court, and my speech was going to allude to Child Q, in fact, but I will try to modify accordingly my speech. But nonetheless, obviously, it is damning to be here in the 20th century talking about children who are strip-searched by police officers whilst at school and indeed in their environment. And it's also damning to have seen the public report, and I hope that I can at least speak about the public report. Perhaps I can't speak about the public report. I've got an eye from the chair, but nonetheless, the report is in public. But that report gave a damning account of what...
The lady will resume her seat. I'm really acting to try and protect the Honourable Lady. She was very honest to say that her speech was going to be about a particular case, and now she's going to do her best to talk about the same issues without referring to the particular child. But we all know who she's talking about. So the Honourable Lady is going to have to be very, very careful and only speak in very general terms. And I'm saying this to protect the Honourable Lady and Parliament. Claudia Webbe.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the guidance in that respect. And I think that very clearly we know that there are cases very clearly where children are not given an appropriate adult when brought into custody, are not presented with their rights, and indeed, as we've heard before, where children are asked whether they want to have representation whilst in custody. These sorts of practices must end, of course, and we must come to a better understanding of how we treat children, not only in terms of protecting them from crime, but how we treat them when they are brought into custody and falsely accused or not. I have dealt with cases in my own constituency where children, at the time of course of being a child, where they innocently, they say, engage in social media, and that they are then caught in a spiral in a system where they are brought in for questioning and they are frightened of the type of questioning and the way it is posed, and their immediate position is that they are so fearful of the way that they're being questioned, they are fearful of the adults in the room, that they are ready to sign anything in order to get out of the room as quickly as possible. What should have happened, of course, is that they should have had an appropriate adult, they should have had their rights told to them in a manner that they've got proper choice, an informed choice about having proper representation at that point, and if necessary, a pause is given so that they can indeed be given that informed choice, that it is absolutely important that they have an adult in the room, that they have proper legal representation in the room, because what they say in that room, what they admit to in that room, can actually rest with them forever, a day and more, because, of course, it affects every aspect of their life going forward. And so it's important that that children get the right representation from the outset, because, of course, they are for many of them, in the midst of important, very serious exams that will affect the rest of their lives. And they need to be in the right mindset to be able to do those exams. And so is the case of a situation in one of my schools where indeed in a process of a conflict between children, where children were accused of a form of bullying, that they, and it turned out to be a conflict between ethnicities and races, whereby the children in that case weren't given the proper support and advice. The parents weren't given the proper support and advice, and indeed the children were told to stay away from the school environment until the investigation was complete, without being given any support to study at home or do anything that enables them to have a better understanding of the education that they need to continue with, and to have that level of support. So I'm continuing to try to be mindful not to talk about child Q, but nonetheless, it's important that children are allowed to feel safe in their school environment, allowed to feel safe in their neighbourhoods, and allowed to feel safe in their communities, and that they know that the first action by the police isn't to bring them into an invasive situation where they have less power, but is to actually support and treat children as children with the right and proper support around them. And I hope that all of the recommendations that come out of many of these reports into the way that children are treated in custody, that they are actually implemented, and in a way that there is actually an opportunity for, in effect, how we ensure that these recommendations are implemented by ensuring that we have somebody appointed at a senior level that is responsible for ensuring that recommendations that arise out of these very serious and important reports, that they are actually implemented. Because for too often, these recommendations remain unadopted and sit at the bottom of the shelf, and in fact, they need to be addressed in order to protect the future. It's even more vital, of course, that racist and misogynistic attitudes are left out of the custody suite, are left out of the interactions with children. And I think that it's far too often the case for black and other globalized children to be left reeling from racism, and in particular, if they are young women, to be reeling from misogyny as well. And so the institutional racism and misogyny in the police force needs to be seriously addressed, especially when it involves children. And we know that in situations where we've got at the end of the day, we are talking about police services which have already been deemed to have used sexist and derogatory and unacceptable language when it comes to dealing with people in their custody. Where we know of adults being strip searched and it being wrongly applied, let alone the notion of children being strip searched. We also know that in forces like the Metropolitan Police Service, for example, that we're talking about police officers who were, in effect, reprimanded and jailed for sharing photographs of the bodies of Bieber, Henry and Nicole Smallman, two young black sisters from North London who went missing in June 2020. And they shared that to a WhatsApp group with 41 police officers. The police were also accused of showing a lack of interest in the fact that the two sisters were missing, which delayed their search. The Metropolitan Police Service was recently forced to deny that the force is plagued by a culture of misogyny after an official report reveals shocking details of officers sharing messages about hitting and raping women, as well as the deaths of black babies and the Holocaust. The Independent Office for Police Conduct report on behaviour at Charing Police Station said that they found a culture of toxic masculinity. The IOPC also said that the behaviour was part of an offensive Metropolitan Police culture, not just rogue individuals. And it said, we believe these incidents are not isolated or simply the behaviour of a few bad apples. So this of course, all comes after the brutal police crackdown of a vigil in the memory of Sarah Everard. I just want to... I don't believe that case is... Yeah.
Yeah, the debate is about the rights of children whilst in police custody. Now, I understand for reasons of context, the Honourable Lady has made remarks that she has, but this is specifically about the rights of children in police custody. And if you could come back to the subject of the debate, that would be appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for that guidance. And indeed I was, because what I was really highlighting was a policing culture that no adult should be subjected to, let alone a child. And a child to be faced with that type of culture, we simply cannot be prepared to expose children to this type of policing culture. It is therefore vital that measures to avoid being held in police custody or to reduce the amount of time spent are strengthened and enforced for children. The Youth Justice League Centre has found that children are not interviewed under caution outside of a custody suite as often as they could be. Too often children who are refused bail are not being transferred to local authority accommodation as is legally required and are instead being kept in police cells. This must end. I also support the calls from the charity Just for Kids Law for an end to the overnight detention of children by police. Currently, children are subject to the same time limit as adults, and that must change. We cannot allow this to continue. We must redouble our efforts to end the scourge of racism and misogyny that plagues our police forces and all aspects of society. And whilst we do so, we must, and I think I'll end on this, Chair, and whilst we do so, we must ensure that our children are not exposed to unnecessary harm whilst in police custody. Thank you.